So good afternoon. We are experiencing a tiny bit of technical difficulties. So if you can't use the chat box, it's because we can't figure out why we can't get it. So Melissa put my cell phone number in there, so you should be able to see it. If you have a question, I will try to pay attention to those as they come in. We'll see how well I do with that. But want to thank our panelists today. We have our webinar today is about preparing for the CSPR. And we have two state staff members from different states that do this on the state level. We also have Benjamin Starr is going to talk with us just real quick when we get started. And then Melissa and I are also going to share some thoughts. So we're glad that you're here, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ben if you want to start first, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Thank you, Jessica. I just want to thank everybody for being here. Sometimes it can be hard to envision exactly how our work helps the students in schools. But this work of planning and reporting on programs, it really does help ensure that the experiences of children and students in classrooms all across the nation are positive, impactful, and meaningful. And so, please continue to strive to make a difference for the migratory children who benefit so much from these programs. And that was all I had to say. Thank you, Jessica.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to turn off the cameras of the ones that are not speaking, and then as soon as we speak, we'll switch up. That way you can see everybody. So I'll start out for a little bit, and then we're going to switch over. So let me make sure I've got everything right there. Okay. So we're going to kind of start out with just some things to be thinking about when you're working on your CSPR. I noticed in the poll that some of you are not involved at all in the CSPR. About half of you are not. As far as gathering data, you might be involved in a different way. And so you may be with us today just to learn more about the CSPR. So this is the consolidated performance report that states send in each year. We used to send it in, and so this year it's going to come from M6 for the first time. And so I'm going to just talk about a few things about the counts and things to think about, and then we'll be able to hear from both Linda and Odelia that do this kind of for their state, and so they'll walk you through their process. And so to start it out, I wanted you to know that if you're not familiar with CSPR, we used to fill out different reports in different ways and kind of submit those, and now those numbers will be coming directly from M6. And so there was just a email that was sent out on the listserv just this week or last week, I believe, that gave some hypothetical allocations using M6 counts. And so if your state is not aware of how to do it, how things are working, then definitely you'll want to catch up. But most states are following along and have someone that's really been watching this. But those counts, that email did come out this week or last week, sorry. Just to give a little bit of background in case you're brand new to this, there are two major counts. There are lots of things to the CSPR that we're not going to talk about, but those two major counts we're going to talk about and how to reconcile some of that data. So one is the total count of all eligible migrant students, and the other is the count of all that were served in summer. We've had a lot of questions about served in summer. I know we're the IDNR consortium, but we also do a lot of recruiters across the country will do a lot of beginning services with families. And so we've had questions about that. And so we've specifically had questions about like what you count in CSPR2. And so the category 2. And so I'm just going to have you don't have to answer this question, but I want you to think in your mind whether you think these things are services or not. A migrant recruiter signs up a family and then brings some flyers to invite the family to attend a reading night that's coming up. Now, I'm not going to answer these yet. We're going to go over what a service is because that'll make sense for what you're looking for your category 2. A migrant recruiter hands out hygiene bags when he signs up a new OSY. A migrant recruiter gives out a towel, some soap, gloves, and shampoo when he signs up a new family. Now, I am not saying that these are services. I just want you to think in your mind whether you think this would be something that would be considered served in your state for CSPR for category 2. A migrant recruiter tells a family about an upcoming ELL lesson offered by MEP when she signs the family. So these are things that recruiters might do, but it doesn't mean that it would be a service. And so before we get started and jump into the CSPR, because we have those two major counts that we're looking at, we just wanted to do a reminder of what are services. And so when Linda and Odelia are talking about gathering the data, they're gathering data for those services and the things that have been done throughout the year for migrant students. So remember, Services are a subset of all the activities that Migrant Ed provides through its programs and projects. And the CSPR, a lot of the things that it's asking you are specific things that you did. How much instructional service was provided, just all different things that are specifically related to program setup and how your priority kids and how many kids had QADs during certain times. But when we're thinking about services, the services, one, need to directly benefit a migrant child. They need to address a need of a migrant child consistent with your SEA's comprehensive needs assessment or service delivery plan. They need to be grounded in scientifically based research, or in case of support services, are a generally accepted practice. And 4, are designed to enable the program to meet its measurable outcomes and contribute to the achievement of the state's performance targets. So you could see that some of the things that I mentioned on that previous slide are not going to hit all that. It's not going to be able to be considered a service. And so it says it's important for agencies to be able to ensure that their services are of sufficient intensity and duration to really make an impact on the students. And so it says it's important that we design services, and this is all coming from the guidance, of sufficient intensity to provide reasonable promise of the project ability to meet those outcomes. Those things that we say as a migrant education program we're going to do for our students, that we're going to be able to measure progress and are we doing those? In turn, the attainment of these outcomes enables a program to help migrant children succeed in school and contribute to the achievement of the state's performance targets. So I know we have a lot of different rules in migrant ed to remember, and we know that the base of everything we're trying to do, the reason we find kids, is to be able to serve them. So this, you can always refer back to the guidance for more information on what is allowable and what is not. There's examples of things that are allowable. And so we do IDNR. It says here there are activities that are allowable activities that are not constitute a service, such as identification, recruitment, parental involvement, program evaluation, professional development, etc. And then there's a really good paragraph that kind of explains. It says another example would be handing out leaflets to migrant families on available reading programs. You can do this, but it's not considered a service. Although it's allowable activity, it's not a service because it does not meet all the criteria that we talked about earlier. 1, it doesn't directly benefit the migrant child. 2, if it's not grounded in scientifically based research. And 3, if the activity itself will not increase the child's reading skills and thereby increase their ability to meet the state's performance targets. So just keep that in mind as you're wondering kind of where the line is of what service is not. And so you want to remember, you want to be familiar with the needs of what your needs assessment says you're going to do, what your service delivery plan says what you're going to do, what needs the families that you have in your area, what their needs are, and ensure that we're really offering high quality services. And so recently OME also sent out a clarification too that was already existing, but it was just where states could find it. It says states educational agencies are responsible for determining whether summer and intersession services, so the things that we're going to also report on our category 2, are of sufficient duration and intensity to enable the program to meet its measurable outcomes and contribute to the achievement of the state's performance targets. So this is kind of within, like I said, this already existed. Wasn't really a clarification. It was something that already existed, but they just kind of put it out there for us this summer. And then they have a presentation about the use of funds. And it says specifically about summer, children must participate in the program for at least 1 day in order to be counted in category 2. So we thought we would give this just due to all the questions that we've had about different activities before we started and really delved into the CSPR section. And so I'm going to turn the time over to Linda, who's going to share her screen. I'm going to stop sharing mine and be able to share from her perspective what they're doing in her state. So Linda, does it let you share?
Are you able to see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay. Let's see.
Perfect. We can see it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Linda Fournier. I'm with the Migrant Education Services Data System Specialist with Tri-Valley Opportunity Council. Sorry. And I'm going to just share a little bit of how we prepare for the CSPR. Okay. Our state starts the process of preparing for the CSPR as soon as the performance period begins. We have a CSPR checklist that we have created to guide us throughout the year. And so we start with the certificates of eligibility, the children who had an SEA approved certificate of eligibility and that are entered into the state's migratory database which is our MIS 2000. We do eligibility trainings throughout the year. Before determining eligibility, staff must take a certification test and pass it. We check for possible duplicates and verify the spelling of names, date of births, things that we see more common as far as mistakes. And we do have a strategic process in place for reviewing our COEs. And so therefore these students are in count 1 for eligible migratory students. We check the systems to ensure all pending or in process COEs are completed and submitted in a timely manner. Our staff is pretty persistent in doing follow-ups on things that are needed on the certificates of eligibility, whether it's a mistake or we need follow-up questions. They're pretty good about being persistent so we can get those figured out and modified and then submitted. During the reviewing of the COE, we do a move notification to notify other states and districts that a student has moved to our area from their area. This helps with networking and then possible recruiting purposes. Once the COE is approved, the district is notified of the newly approved COE. This helps initiate that process of collecting the data. We also do data checks in the system to populate eligibility expiration dates based on the 3 years minus the 1 day from the qualifying date or on the 22nd birthday. And then next we have the collecting of minimum data elements. We have a migrant student information form, and this is sent out to each district with at least 1 migratory student to collect minimum data elements. We conduct trainings and correspond with districts throughout the school year as well. This year, we're actually starting to do something new. We're going to be providing workshops for our districts, and it's going to be monthly. We will cover collecting minimum data elements, including transcripts. We are also including like a Q&A to help support and guide our districts throughout the school year. And then we have our summer program student report, and this is where we collect the minimum data elements as well. And then we have our services that are our instructional services, and then our support services are in there, as well as assessment information, coursework. And we do collect this and have weekly meetings with our summer programs. And then once the information, of course, is gathered, we look over it, review it, and then we do enter it into MIS 2000. We also collect the migratory student report. Our state runs a query and we collect student enrollment information. So this report includes the EL and IEP indicator. We also have the graduation data that we get from our system. We also do the dropout data that is collected, and we do this at least twice a year to collect some of the enrollment information, and then of course enter it into our system. Okay, more of the some of the data that we have, the data completeness and quality control. We of course do re-interviews, and those are randomly selected and conducted throughout the performance period. We also have the students turning 3. And we verify the children 2 years of age whose residency in the state has been verified on or after their 3rd birthday for at least 1 day during the performance period. This report is pulled in MIS 2000 monthly. And so we have access. We also have access to the Child Plus, and that's our Head Start database. So we do have enrollments that we can get from there, as well as the LE. I'm sorry, as well as the EL indicator. And we do our best to, exhausting all possibilities in collecting the data. Our staff will try to contact the families to check on the residency of the children that have turned 3. For the residency verification dates, we check M6 excluded and M6 record issues. We do follow the data logic in M6. And if there are any data logic issues that appear, if there's no date that establishes residency, within the performance period, we do troubleshoot and collect any data issues or correct it, and of course try to figure any of that information out or gather any information that has been missing. And to add to that, we have the process data. We process the data merges in MIS 2000 and in M6. We check data quality reports in M6. We troubleshoot and again investigate the data logic issues that we have. And then of course we run the child count in MIS 2000, and then we run it in M6 as well to make sure that the counts are matching. If the counts don't match, we follow the M6 child reconciliation procedure and make the appropriate corrections that we need to in MIS 2000. And this is for category 1 and 2 counts. We also have a state database that we use, and that's at the Minnesota Department of Education. So we get a report, a student validation report. With this report, we update any missing Minnesota state IDs for the students, as well as missing EL and IDEA indicators and flags in MIS 2000. So preparing for the CSPR, and like I had mentioned, we're pretty much preparing the whole performance period. And so if any code tables were modified during the performance period, we do work with MSED to update our reports in MIS 2000. And MSED follows the file specifications for each file or report. And then the Minnesota data team and the Minnesota IT team at the Minnesota Department of Ed, we do meet to analyze the business rules and file specifications to determine the parameters of each file. And we do that, we meet a few times during the performance period, but mainly around this time until we submit. And then once our data has been entered or completed, we compile the reports to complete each section of the CSPR. We ensure that the reports have unduplicated counts. And then we do have comparison files that we receive from Minute team at the Minnesota Department of Ed, and we do compare those reports in M6 to the reports in M6 and MIS 2000. So after the appropriate reports are compiled, we enter the data in the data check sheet, and we use the data check sheet tool to indicate where the additional comments are needed if applicable. Once the information is verified by the Minnesota Department of Education, and then the data team at Tri-Valley Opportunity Council several times, it is submitted to the Minute team to upload to Eden for the CSPR data submission. Some things too that we like to do in addition is for MIS 2000, we do have an authorization form that we like to send out to the superintendents for each district migrant liaison to have access to MIS 2000. And that has helped because then they can pull the student reports and they can see all the students that are in their district. So that's really nice when we get that, and it also helps with networking and corresponding with the districts. And I just want to say thank you. If you have any questions, you can contact me
think you just illustrated how complex the process can be. Before we go on to Odelia's, I wanted to just kind of go back and just highlight a few of those, like you were very specific and some really good things that states can do. And so I feel like it's, make sure I'm sharing the right thing. When you look at this, you know, first you're looking for duplicates, then you're checking to make sure all the COEs are complete, then you're reviewing to make sure the move notices. And so this whole process that states should have this idea of like, what happens to your COEs? Are you checking to make sure? What does it look like? And so we will post this, this presentation files under our webinar page. And so she's got a really good list of, you know, first we do this, and then we do this first with the COEs. Then you have, you know, you're looking to make sure you have those minimum data elements. So she's explaining the process there. Then you have your summer, you know, you've got kids served in the summer. So you're making sure that you've got that student report. Then you have your migrant student report that's looking at the needs of each one of them, looking at EL, IEP, graduation data, dropout data. So there's layers upon layers of things that you should be looking for. Then you have your re-interviews, because part of the, you know, part of it is reporting on those. Students turning 3, your residency verification dates. And so I really like how you were really thorough in kind of explaining all of these different things. And then you're going to M6. So after you put your stuff into your system, you're able to go and look at M6 and see if those things are coming out the same way, see what errors are running with the child count reconciliation, the student validation report. So I think that there's a lot of things that this is a good list of things, processes to kind of follow. And so we're going to switch over to New York now and get Odelia's thoughts on, I'm sure you do a lot of the same things, but then you probably have, you know, maybe different ways that you do it. And so we'll switch the time over to Odelia to be able to share from her end.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Odelia. I'm the data training coordinator for New York. And a lot of things that Linda said are going to be similar to what we're doing because, of course, you know, we are submitting the same data pretty much. But one thing that we have done in the past in New York that has been very helpful for us is that we created a data timeline and we have been sharing it with staff. That has helped us, especially with the data collection, because we want to make sure everybody knows what is due and when it's due ahead of time. This data timeline goes beyond CSPR. We have a lot of information there about our service delivery plan, other data elements that we collect in New York. But it just has been very helpful for us to have the information in one place so everybody can refer to that data timeline. We train a lot on this data timeline and then we train again because, you know, sometimes we think things are clear, but we might have to just double check. And the way New York is set up is that we have 8 migrant education tutorial and support services. So we have 8 regional sites. So we have 7 data specialists that are helping us with this information. And we sit down with them, with the directors of the regional sites and the data specialists, and we review the information together for the next 3 months. We have learned that that has been helpful because when you come with, to people and you say, this is what you want to do throughout the entire year, it might be overwhelming. But, you know, we do it every 3 months, we make adjustments, and then we can clarify any questions. We collect a lot of data, similar to what Linda was saying before. What we do is that we try to make sure that the data is as accurate as possible. We do this, again, we put in the data timeline a lot of data pulses, we call it, or like just every couple of months, we double check the data at the state level just to make sure that things make sense. And then we bring any areas of concerns to the staff. Residency verification dates have been very important, especially when we start looking at M6 and how we are verifying residency. So we check a lot of that information, enrollment date, withdrawal dates, resident verification, all that information, just to make sure that everything makes sense and is clean as possible, not only for CSPR, but again, like this is a process that we start at the beginning of the performance period. And then we share that data. So we do a data pulse and then we share the data with staff just to make sure that we improve the processes. You know, we don't want to wait until when we are going to submit data for CSPR to realize that we didn't provide a service for a student, or we were not able to collect all of the minimum data elements for a student. So we're doing this proactively throughout the entire year, and also help us stay on top of the data collection. So we do a lot of running reports. I'm sure if you are a data person in your state, you have the special reports that you like to run. We have to be as proactive as possible. I like to check ahead of time what's going on with the category 1 and category 2. We use MIS 2000 as our vendor for New York. But even so that they have done a fantastic job throughout the years to getting the data as you know, very, very accurate before we submit CSPR data. I still like to go and look at it myself, understand what the lists are doing. And I also like to go into CSPR fact sheets and just read the information again, just to make sure that I haven't missed anything. And of course, we do this way ahead of time for CSPR submission, just in case we need to change something on a report or change something in our process. Just like Linda said, we check a lot about those children turning 3, when they turn 3, where they were. We have to go back again, double check that they were still in the area when they turned 3. Another thing that we like to do a lot is to check for priority for service ahead of CSPR and throughout the year. Priority for service students, we want to make sure that they are, you know, we are collecting the information for them and then we're providing services. But not only checking for priority for service, but we also check those risk factors that, according to New York, will make a child a priority for service. And we do this again just to be proactive and to have this information, share that information with our regional sites so we can improve data collection. We check duplicates. We have the duplicates on M6. If M6 has some duplicates, you know, I go to MIS 2000 and I do the data process there. But MIS 2000 has also provided for us a couple of great reports to find duplicates. So we run that definitely throughout the year, but we do a little bit more right before CSPR submission. We like to run the data in different ways again, just to understand the data and to make sure that we're not missing anyone. So we check the withdrawal days, departure days, and run the data many ways, just in case I'm missing something. We want to make sure that, you know, we don't submit a student that wasn't here in New York for the performance period. And if the student was here, we want to make sure that we have it enrolled and then we're providing for services for those students. It doesn't happen very often, but once in a while, like 2 or 3 times in the last 10 years, I have had issues with a COE, like 1 or 2 COEs. Maybe the recruiter did a COE and then, you know, the IDNR coordinator needed more information, so they send the COE back and there is still pending. So I like to double check those COEs from time to time, just to make sure that the recruiter remembers that there's a COE still pending, because again, what we're trying to do is to make sure that every child that we find counts and that we're providing services for those students. M6 reconciliation reports, I'm sure the next couple of slides are going to talk a lot about them, but they have been great for me and for my job. I really like using them. I use them time to time throughout the entire year, but when it's about time to submit data for CSPR, I am there every day checking and double checking the information, making sure that all the information, I check the excluded list and the included list, and give myself enough time, because something that happens with those reconciliation reports is that it has a little lag of a couple of days between you making the change in your data system and seeing it on M6. But use those reports have been very helpful for me, has made the process for CSPR submission better for me. I feel a little more secure because I have M6 checking my work. And again, just set expectations and due dates. We've been working really hard in providing this information more to all staff members, because recruiters, they are the first person that are collecting the data. They are the ones collecting a lot of those minimum data elements. So we explain to recruiters what the minimum data elements are, why they are important. To the data specialists, that they are the ones that have more in contact with the service providers. They're the people in the ground. So again, to collect those minimum data elements, to double check residency verifications, to the departures information. We rely a lot on the data specialists, so we explain to them why are we trying to do everything that we're doing. Service providers, like Jessica said at the beginning, we make sure that they understand what the measurable program outcomes are, and what we're trying to do with CSPR, what CSPR data is important. And at the state level, we like to sit down and review those data check sheets. If you don't know what they are, there's just a thing that OME used to provide for us, with all the data information that category 1 and category 2 are trying to collect. And we will sit down with the state and just double check the information, see what happened, what changed from the previous performance period to 2 years ago performance period. Again, just in that cycle of how can we improve services and how can we improve the data collection.
Very good. You guys are in the thick of all of the, when I was in Tennessee, it seemed like there was a part of the year that was just so dedicated, just making sure we had everything corrected. And now it seems like it's, you really have to make sure that it's all year. There's a comment to Sarah Storm, says there's a 3-day delay in the reconciliation report from the date they received the file at M6. So we run our report from our system, then wait and run the M6 reconciliation report 3 days later. Then we do reconciliation. That's a really good example. So you know that your state, you make the changes on your own system, it goes up into M6, and like you said, there's three days delay. So if you're thinking, I just fixed this and it didn't work, then that can be a challenge. I did see a hand raised. So if you want to talk, if you'll put it in the chat box, and we'll go ahead and let you ask your question. But since it is, the chat box is working, go ahead and feel free to put those questions in the chat box. Okay, so very good. So Linda and Odelia are still here. If you guys have questions and you want to ask them directly too for a state, I think that's they are excellent resources. It's nice to have someone who's doing this. I've done it in the past, but I'm not doing it right now. And so I think it's really helpful to have that. It says maybe Ben can let us know, but I don't think OME is sending out the data check sheet to states this year. Ben, is that something that you could confirm one way or the other?
Not right now.
Okay, so we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to go into what is available now on M6, so that some of those things that both Odelia and Linda both referenced, I'm going to share you some screenshots, not of any student data, but of some information that's available for that. And so just so that some of you may not have access in M6 to even know that these reports are there. And there are some benefits also on the recruiting side to be aware of those reports, because your data people that have access to it in M6 can get you that information. And so in M6, you can go ahead and check out where it says, when you get into M6, there'll be something that on the side, your little dashboard that'll have, your search, your work list, your lists, and then reports. So some of you may open up that and there's very little that you have. If your specific roles in M6, you'll have lots of access to things. And so I felt like it would be helpful for everyone to know what is there. And a few of the things, that we're going to look at specifically are the dashboards. I'm going to look at the comments here and see if I see anything else. From Sue from Oregon, it says the data check sheet is very helpful. Please consider sending out to the states. Loranda says it's also very important to make sure your state is completing or rejecting merges in M6 because it holds up other states from claiming those students until your determination is made. That is a really good point. So let's say Odilia has a student that has, and Linda has a student, and it looks like they're one and the same. We literally can make it so another one, if they're waiting on us to accept or reject that merge, it can make it so that student information can't be, like it says here, it can hold up other states being able to, access that. So they have more comments on keeping the checklist. So there is another comment. How does your summer program reports in your state system, like MIS 2000, translate into reportable services in M6? For example, how do you adjust for a summer program who reported that backpacks were distributed to a family an allowable cost, but would this not be of enough intensity to report as a service? So going back to the slides earlier that I talked about for summer service specifically, we do have that presentation from OME that says that it needs to be of a full, enough of a, like equal to a day. So delivering a backpack wouldn't be considered a service unless it met all of those other criteria of other things that you're doing. So I think the biggest things is states have to have a system set up that they're reporting, whether it's a service log that they're reporting, what are considered, allowable of sufficient duration summer services. And then those are the ones that would be entered into. That may be a series of things, like you may have done multiple things that equal out to a day, but that would definitely be something. I don't know if Odilia or Linda, you guys want to make any comments about that? About Julie's comment?
Hi, Julie. Yes, so there you can chat with your MIS 2000 team. They can do some back information about it, like if you want to still track that you provided the backpack, but that is not an allowable service, you can just tell them that specific code that you're using as a service not to be included when they're running category 2. That way, when you're submitting the information, you're able to see that, and then you can run the report before you send the information and you prepare the information for M6, and just double check that those students that they only receive the backpacks, they are not marked as summer serve, or like I think it's category 3 for M6 summer serve. So you just have to double check that information, but they can do it. They can definitely do it. Just make sure that you have your own supplemental service code specifically for those backpacks, and that service code does not get included when you're trying to figure out category 2 for CSPR.
Perfect. Good job. And Will's comment, we track the delivery of goods such as backpacks. We just do not include that service code when we count summer or academic service. Thank you. And Julie said that was her question. So good. That's why it's good to have, good people doing it right now that can share their thoughts. Okay, so a few of the dashboards that we're going to talk about here, just so you know what's in M6. So there's a data management one that we're going to look at. Specifically with data management, you can check record submission. You can see, when things are being submitted into your system, when it's getting to M6. Withdrawals and course history submissions. You can check to see if course history was entered for withdrawn students. You can check on current or past program information and look at mobility. So I'm going to show you what some of those look like. So here's a little bit of the, just when you open it up under reports, you have this account management, child mobility. I'm not going to show everything, but just kind of things that are on there. Data management, things about your MEP population, records exchange, and student achievement. And so specifically, here's an example of what one looks like for student achievement. So the state can go in, they can look and see, specifically depending on the performance period, how students are performing in important academic areas. There's also an age for grade breakdown. And so if you look over here, all the ones in black, they're suggesting that it might likely be a data error. And you can actually go in if you have access to this report and be able to look and see who are those 6 kids in this particular grade that look like they're not in the right grade. And so There's a lot of different checks and balances that you can look at. They also have information about your PFS, your EL, and your IEP populations. And so when Odilia was talking about checking and checking again, you can actually go in and look at the total enrollments by certain dates. And you can look at, actually all the way down, drilling down to which students they are. And so you want to be aware of, like what Julie just mentioned, you put data in and you're wanting to make sure that the data that you're putting in is going to the right place for the right reasons. And so the same thing with priority for service. And Odilia mentioned the indicators. When they're looking for the indicators to determine if they are PFS in their state, this is a way that you can go back and check those kind of things. On student information, there's a lot of different kind of reports that you can look at. You can look at the ID count, your child count. So you could see on those hypothetical counts that OME sent out for possible funding, you could actually, it's based on the child counts that we have right now. And so you can see demographics. You can see enrollments by MDEs, enrollments where students are in multiple states, the potential missed enrollment, so students that are showing up in other states that are mentioning that they might have been in your state, grade retention, which we just looked at, course history, and assessment. So there are a lot of information that you can go into if you have access to this, if you're working with the data, and a lot of these things can go right back into checks that you want to be checking for CSPR. So here's more examples of just kind of what that menu looks like, related to data quality. You can look at the file submission. You can look at potential duplicates. So Linda mentioned earlier, going in and making sure that there's not duplicates. And then one of the comments in the chat box was, hey, make sure if there are duplicates that you're merging them and not, just kind of leaving them in the system there. Data validity, sometimes maybe the birth date's off. Maybe an enrollment date was before they even arrived. So you can look at the logic issues that are happening, data completeness. So look at reports on things that you're missing. There's the actual child count reconciliation, where you would look at, how many kids would be included in the count, how many are being excluded, and then you can actually go in and drill down and look at each one to see why a student might be excluded from the count. There's also student mobility information as far as their general move to and move from. So every single one of these reports can really help in the process to make sure that that data that you have is clean. So just an example of what it might look like for the child count reconciliation overview. When you go in there to say, all right, I think I have 1,000 kids, and then you look in and say, wow, it looks like I have included in the count that would count for my CSPR category 1. I have 833. Why are these 430 being excluded? And I can go in under view details and look at each one of them. And it may be that the OSY's birth date shows that they're already 22, or every single one of them will have a different reason. You can go in there and see exactly. Maybe you didn't do your verifications to show that the child was present during the year. So there can be a number of reasons why it could be excluded, but you can go in and check that. Category 2, for example, same thing. And it'll, again, maybe you did the enrollment of the summer program before the QAD happened. Any of those kind of things, like you go in and say, okay, I think I served 100. I thought I served 180. Okay, it turns out that I served this, and I have to make sure that I fix that data in order for it to be able to show up in the system correctly. And again, as a reminder, you're fixing it on your local system, whether it's MIS 2000 or a state system that you guys have built. It has to be fixed there, and then it's uploaded to M6. And so you want to make sure that you have that all correct. So here's another example of some of the things that are available in the child count reconciliation overview. You can look at potential duplicates if there were any, near matches. You can review. You can go in and look at your minimum data element completeness. Maybe you're thinking that you have everything in and you want to make sure that you're not missing any. You can go in there and be able to see that. Now, again, this is if you're putting it into your local data system and setting that up. And so you want to make sure that you're getting those things in. So here's an example of what data completeness might look like. So it could show, how many of them have been completed and how many of them were missing. And so the percentages might say, this is the percentage that's missing and this is the percentage that you have. And so also you can take a look at where there's some general move information of where your kids are coming from. So these are helpful for states to really be able to look at who you should be partnering with, who would be your states that are sending or receiving. And so these kind of things are helpful to just kind of track and to make sure that you're aware and that it makes sense. Odelia said report and report and report and check all these different reports. All of this should make sense for your data administrators as they look at the big picture of what's happening in the state. It also is helpful to work with your IDNR coordinators because they can also see things that they think they have happening, and they can make sure that the data equals out from an IDNR side as far as what you're believing the population looks like when you look at the demographics and things like that. But all of these are very helpful when you're going back to check for CSPR. There also is included in when you go to your menu in M6, there is a little resource section, and there is some the child count reconciliation recommended guidance. So there's specific information related to that, and you can kind of read through and be aware of those kind of things. Some of you may be wondering, like, I haven't seen any of this stuff before, and maybe you don't need it. Maybe you don't need any access to it. But if you're a data specialist who's working on CSPR and would need this, there are different roles in that, different access to each one of, when a new user is being set up, there are different things that people can see. So if you're not seeing these things, then you can always reach out to those that have access if there's a particular report that you're wishing to be able to really, and it relates to your job, to really be able to understand and to see. And so it's kind of complex as far as who has what roles. And so those of you that are setting up M6 roles, you can see, some of them can create users, and some can run data quality reports, and other ones cannot. And so it's really helpful that you understand, especially those that are working on CSPR, you understand what reports are available and what you can do, but you also understand if you don't have access to that, it may be that you don't need that. But there may be some of you that just need to actually have an account, and you haven't had that started yet. I also wanted to, before we finish today, one of the best tools that is really helpful is Excel with data. And so I wanted to ask Melissa, we have a couple different trainings that are available that are already recorded, and she has worked a ton with Excel. I just wanted her to kind of overview what both of these different trainings have, and just kind of some ideas of things that might be helpful. I'll turn the time over to you.
Yes, hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes.
So the first one that we have there, the webinar, the beginners Excel tips and tricks for MEP staff, that one has got basic tips. But sometimes I've been using Excel for a long time, and there's stuff that I didn't really use, and it's really good. So I'll just have an overview of what's in there in that video. So that webinar has information about how to freeze panes, something really cool, the add commands to the quick access toolbar. That's the little left of the top left with all the quick access to a bunch of commands. So you can add a lot of them to your quick access. You can even add macros to your quick access. So I encourage everybody to just take a look at it. If you're not using it much, you can use it and customize it. It's really cool. Another thing that we talk about on that webinar, it's suggesting row and column width, add columns and rows, format painter. And that one, I didn't know that if you double click, it stays on. So you might already know that, but wrapping tags, clear formats, renaming tabs, undo command, customize the status bar. That's the bottom of the Excel sheet. That's what you see. You can see counts, etc. Password protect, how to password protect is in there. Shortcuts, big on shortcuts. Conditional formatting, removing duplicates, which is really good. And there's also some basic formulas in there. The one on the right, the advanced Excel, that one talks mostly about pivot tables, so very useful for CSPR. I encourage everybody to see it just to maybe refresh your memory. If you're not using pivot tables, well, it's great. You should use them, especially for CSPR. And that's all, Jessica. That's what's in the webinars.
Okay. So we have a question to everyone on how do we use a lot of Google Docs spreadsheets in our district instead of Excel. Is there a tips and tricks for this program? there are a lot of things that you can do in Google Docs that are similar to Excel. We haven't really focused a lot on the Google Docs. We focused more on Excel just because I feel like Excel is more robust than Google Docs.
Yes, it
Um,
is. It is more robust. Mhm.
So if you can use Excel instead, I would definitely do that. But if not, we have not focused a lot on that, but I'm sure there has to be some things that are available for that. So if we come across it, we can definitely share those. I wanted to share, since we're just sharing you the presentation, I wanted to share where you can find those. Let me make sure I'm sharing my screen right. Hold on, too many things. Okay, so I wanted to share where you can find those presentations on our website. So if you scroll down just to the YouTube channel, on there, you will, just Google Excel and you'll see multiple Excel ones. They are found in here. And so Melissa, I don't know if you want to put the direct links to those in the chat box. So one other thing, I think we're getting ready to run out of time. Let me go ahead and put this into, we always have to, whenever we share anything or do a training, we always have a training evaluation survey. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into the chat box before we finish. But any questions or comments that people have on anything, if you want to put, if anyone wants to unmute themselves, if you want to talk, you can put your, go ahead and let me know. There is the Excel the Excel training that's available. So this, I feel like we had a lot of different information. I appreciate the panelists sharing, because both of them really do a good job in their states. New York is one of those states that for a long time that I know Will did a lot of the data for years and years, and there was a lot of data questions over the years that I asked him. And so I think that it's helpful to reach out to your peers, reach out to the people that are doing this. Please let us know how we, on the evaluation, if this was helpful, but also other topics that you might be interested in trainings in the future. And Ben, is there anything you want to say before we finish?
No. Excellent work. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all. We appreciate everyone joining us. We will put this, let me share one more thing, because I keep telling you we'll put it on the website and then I don't share you where. If you go to the website, if you're wondering what happens to the files, we always put the recordings under the YouTube channel, but under our webinar page, we always put the actual presentation files. And so we'll go ahead and put those on there. That way you have Olivia's list and you have Linda's list of the things that they're doing, and you can find that right there on the webinar page. So I thank all of you that helped me with this, and for all of your insight, and for all of you that were patient with the chat box. So thank you and have a good rest of the day.